All right, this is Saturday. Saturday, February the 17th, year 2024. Want to listen to some of these events going on national news pertaining to freedom and the love for freedom and what people would do whenever they truly feel like their freedom is threatened. Please listen.
Artillery, that's unfair, and it's not modern war ideology. We have to develop technology. We've started doing that. We have to start building drones.
I've been speaking to American generals, others who said, you can win, but it depends on the will of politicians in your allied nations, in the United States and everywhere else. As you know, there is a stalling in the United States Congress. The Republican-led House will not address the huge weapons bill that the president is trying to get to you. Some of them may be here. What would you say to your Republican colleagues in the United States? Anybody who's blocking that bill?
If Ukraine will be alone, you have to understand what will be. Russia will destroy us, destroy Baltic, destroy Poland, and they can do it. Yesterday I had very interesting, very useful, I think, dialogues with German government and also with France partners, and I said very clearly and very honestly, if you will remind that what was going on in Ukraine in 2014, our people were not ready for the war, for the quick occupation of Crimea, part of Donbass, and then during almost 8 years, people began to be ready for such aggression, not only with a weapon. It's not a question of weapon. You're ready psychologically. And to my mind, I think so. No, God bless you, will not have any attacks from Russia, but to my mind that in Europe there is no any nations for today who is ready for invasion. Not because we are stronger or better, not of course, we are the same, with the same values, but we had this all these years, and your nations didn't have. And psychologically, and informationally, and in media, you didn't prepare your nations. Understanding why? Because nobody wants it. I mean, that's why. Senators have to understand only in unity we can win Russia, and they have to understand that we will win with them or not. We don't have any other way. We have only one land, our Ukraine. Yeah.
I understand exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about preparedness. You know, none of us want to prepare for death. Though we know it's the inevitable towards life is part of death. Death is part of life. But we don't properly prepare ourselves. It's kind of like all of a sudden you find out that you got cancer. And all of a sudden your whole life just basically completely collapses. This is where you have to have the faith in God through the Lord Jesus Christ, in believing that even though you may die a physical death, does not mean that you're going to die a spiritual death. You'll still be alive. The thing about it is, the physical toll will end, and then we will no longer have to live in that type of suffering. But you must prepare yourself, regardless whether you're rich, poor, educated, non-educated, regardless of what continent that you live on. You must prepare yourselves for the unexplainable, and for that in which what you don't want to happen, but you have to still prepare yourself in case it does happen. It's kind of like over here in America that they've only taken front seat pertaining to our school industry. And though it's taken away from other funds pertaining to us using those funds in other areas, we have had to basically put flight marshals or school marshals in our schools, to the degree that it's not a matter of if it occurs. Now you must prepare yourself when it occurs. How are you going to respond? How are you going to react? And what are you going to do? This is what makes an effective leadership even more effective, because now you're already expecting the unexpectable. See, over in the country of Troy, which it's debatable whether or not it actually occurred or not, pertaining to the Trojan horse, they, even though it was debatable on taking their gift, they did not pre-plan ahead of time towards what if it was a booby trap? What if it was an entrapment? What if this is some sort of a occurrence that gives the appearances of being good, but in reality it's actually bad? This is the reason why Jesus taught us ahead of time that in the very last days that there would be many false prophets and many false teachers that would rise in the last days, and some would even profess themselves as being the Messiah, being Christ himself. Jesus said that when this happens, not if it happens, but when it happens, if they say that he is in the desert, do not go. If they say that he is in the caves or in the dark places, do not go. Because there will be imitators, there will be fraudulent people, there will be people in sheep's clothing, but will be raging, ravening wolves inside. In other words, they'll be imposters. And don't say if it happens, but start training your mind when it happens. How are you going to respond? Are you going to go running to the first person that says, "Oh, I'm David Koresh, and I'm a new Jesus Christ superstar"? Are you going to run down there all of a sudden and join up with the gang? That's kind of like what they done with Jim Jones here in America, that poisoned and killed so many people with the poisonous Kool-Aid. You're going to have to be alert that we have enemies in the world that are out to kill, steal, and destroy the very things that Jesus Christ taught us to be alert of. And if you're not alert to that degree, and you get caught broadsided or you get caught blindsided, you know whose fault it is? It is your own. It has reached a level in the 21st century towards survival tactics and survival skills such as I never would have dreamed of, even going back 20 years ago, before artificial intelligence come out on the scene. Now, once more, we can take artificial intelligence and we can use it for a platform to better our lives. Or there's bad actors out there that will use artificial intelligence in a negative way towards weaponizing it, towards bringing harm and hurt into our lives. So what do we have to do? We have to prepare ourselves for these bad actors. We have to train ourselves and understand that these same tools can actually be weaponized, and it can be weaponized against us if we don't watch. So it's not a matter of working smarter, it's a matter of working harder. And that's exactly what the president of Ukraine is talking about here.
Mr. President, you are outmanned, and you always say this. There are a huge advantage in terms of numbers of Russian forces. There is a question of potentially you signing a law or changing the draft and the conscription and lowering the age from 27 to 25. Are you going to do that?
For defending operation, some number of brigades they began to translate me. Yeah, it's difficult. So for counter-offensive, you need another number of brigades. So the question of mobilization is a complicated thing. Yes, and I can't share with you the number of victims and casualties. Yeah, but for example, if you will, when we speak that they have too much people, yeah, but you have to know, for example, in Avdiivka, I just comparing the number 1 to 7. It's a pity that but for one death of Ukrainians, 7 deaths of Russians, 1 to 7. So I'm not comparing this war, and I don't want, and it's tragedy even to lose one person, but we didn't begin it. So but you have to know, have to understand what was going on in this small city.
Alexei Navalny, like all Russian opposition figures before him, knew that he had a target on his back. In the summer of 2020, he was poisoned with the Novichok nerve agent. You may remember the dramatic story. Navalny fell ill while on a flight inside Russia. The pilot made an emergency landing. Doctors rushed to his side, and he survived. He was flown out and treated right here in Germany, where doctors confirmed that he had been poisoned. Navalny quickly blamed Putin. The Kremlin always denied it. Despite great risk, Navalny wanted to return to Russia, as he told me in December 2020, just 4 months after that Novichok attack. Why do you want to go back? And I guess, do you think you'll be safe when you go back?
Well, I don't think that I can have such a privilege being safe in Russia, but I have to go back because I don't want these, groups of killers exist in Russia. I don't want Putin be ruling of Russia. I don't want him being president. I don't want him being czar of Russia because, well, he's killing people. He's the reason why the whole country is degrading.
The great Zorro, basically the person in behind the curtain, the great Oz. What not only America, but the world in general, the civilized society needs to start doing. They need to start looking at people like President Putin towards it being a parasite. These are parasites. There's big parasites, there's little parasites. Even what goes on over in China and them not allowing for their people to have the same freedoms as we have here in America and other parts of the world, they need to be looked at as being parasites. All the drugs coming over into the illegal immigration trade coming down on the southern border. This should be looked upon as being a parasite. Now, what are we going to do about the parasite? Well, we know what the medical industry does whenever they find out if we have cancer, if we have a tumor, or if we have a this, or if we have a that. We try to eliminate the parasite. Or we try to treat the parasite to where the parasite is no longer a parasite, but the parasite becomes back operable in working again. These dark forces that's throughout the world, they have to be addressed, and they need to be addressed on the level of looking at them as a parasite. And I truly believe that that this man's courage in standing up against what he knowed, that there was more of a rim of likelihood, not just possibility, but likelihood that whenever he went back to Russia, that he would suffer that much more. This is the reason why that I made the video that I made just yesterday, that now you can look at this from a different perspective pertaining to his death, that now his suffering has ended. His long agonizing agony of suffering has now ended. That yes, Putin wanted to instill not just into his life, but anybody else's life that challenged President Putin. Keep in mind, it was 30 plus years ago whenever Ronald Reagan stood on a national platform with a big mic and said the old Yugoslavia, USSR, was nothing more or less than a parasite. Ronald Reagan actually called them a evil empire at the time. And it started a movement. And in that movement, it caused the Berlin Wall to fall. And in that movement, it basically brought the old Yugoslavia government down to its knees pertaining to filing bankruptcy up onto itself. And it wasn't until later when they changed their name from no longer being the old USSR, but the Federal Federation. We thought, in disguise, that maybe they were sincere in trying to turn over a new leaf over in Russia pertaining to their oligarchs. But we can see now today that instead of them turning over a new leaf, we're still dealing with the same old forces of what we was dealing with originally, even 30 plus years ago, whenever Ronald Reagan stood on the platform and said, "You are a parasite. You are a piranha. And because of it, you need to be treated as such." It's awful in what has occurred in this individual's life, but thank God that his suffering is now ended. And hopefully, may God rest his soul. Pray for his loved ones, his friends, his fans, those that supported him openly, and hopefully this will, what word am I looking for here? Regenerate or reinvigoate the true momentum in his motives that now will radiate all over the world. That's what I pray for.
People are so poor. We have 25 million people living below the poverty line, and the whole degradation of system, fortunately for me, including system of assassination of people, he's the reason of that, and I want to go back and try to change it.
Coming up next on the program, more on the legacy of war. This time, hope in war-ravaged Sarajevo 3 decades ago, inspiration for the war-torn everywhere.
In the darkest times, there's something about expressing ourselves and doing it together.
Superstar actor-producer Matt Damon tells the story of Bono, Bosnia, and bomb shelters filled with music.
That can I'm going to finish out what he's trying to say there is that it brings out the best of us in basically trying to defend humanity, defend our freedom of humanity towards being able to express ourselves either through music, art, or other means. And these things did not occur during the rising of the pharaohs pertaining to what went on in the Egyptian era, whenever God sent Moses as a liberator to set my people free, let my people go. It wasn't until then is whenever we become vociferous in different eras, in different ways, toward being able to say, you know, what you're doing, you can go ahead and do, but what you're doing is wrong. And now the world is beginning to awaken to that tool, regardless whether it be through music, art, or in other artistical ways of being able to express ourselves towards saying, hey, President Putin is a parasite. And what do we do to parasites in the medical industry? We either try to cure them, and if we can't cure them, we kill them. That's what we do. That's what needs to be done with Hamas over in the Middle East, that obviously you are a parasite. This is the reason why Jerusalem is standing up and doing what they're doing. The leader of Israel over there has made it very clear that if they compromise on this movement, that then the parasite's going to come back, and whenever the parasite comes back, they have to look forward to all this pain, misery, and agony again.
I spoke this week with Hollywood superstar Matt Damon about how art and music can sustain life even in desperate circumstances. The siege of Sarajevo during the Bosnian War was the longest in modern warfare, lasting nearly 4 years in the 1990s before it ended 28 years ago. Amid the bloodshed and the ethnic cleansing, Sarajevo's underground music scene provided an escape for many. From the other side of the world, the rock band U2 sent messages of support, vowing to perform there after the war. And that is the extraordinary story at the heart of a new documentary, Kiss the Future.
During the war, we would play music. That's what kept us sane. Art can inspire people to resist. Okay, you got 5 minutes. What would you do? You do what you love the most.
Courage is grace under pressure. That's a good definition of the people of Sarajevo.
I was interviewed for the film about my reporting during that time, and I spoke to the Oscar-winning screenwriter and actor Matt Damon about producing this documentary and about that Dunkin' Donuts Super Bowl ad last week. Matt Damon, welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It was amazing when I saw, the whole documentary because, even though we were there as reporters, we didn't actually know.
I want to make a comment about the Super Bowl because she just made a mention of the Dunkin' Donut in the Super Bowl. Their commercials are so high, so expensive to be able to advertise because they know that they have such a viewing audience. But I was inspired on this last Super Bowl, not because of who won or who lost the game, but my primary, motives of watching the Super Bowl is to learn what type of methods that they use to draw the people into their commercials and actually being able to say, wow, that was kind of cool, wasn't it? That wasn't just a commercial. That was like an entertainment feature or a clip or a tidbit or something. Whenever a group of people was willing to spend several $1 million, they was criticized for it pertaining to bringing the Lord Jesus Christ onto the scene in the Super Bowl. And they done it on the first half of the Super Bowl, and they also done it on the last half of the Super Bowl. I don't forget now what the expense was. I think it was somewhere around $20 million. But I thought to myself, wow, what a way to get the message out to the world. And I've always said that about video games, regardless whether it was Pac-Man. Of course, I don't even know that Pac-Man even exists anymore, or Donkey Kong, or whatever, that in the enlightenment of all these games that children and grown-ups too as well, pretending to be gamers, are attracted to, how come we haven't seen a flood of people involving in engineering these programs in basically pursuing kind of like a David and Goliath show? That, you got David on one side, you got Goliath on the other side, and who's going to win, who's going to lose, and turn it into an imagery form to where it's actually not just something that you're doing with idle time, but you're actually learning from that. How come we have not had good instructors and teachers, good people with good ideals that wasn't willing to sit down and do this? That way it would advance our civilization so much further into the future beyond where we are today. There's so many different ways and so many different methods that people can get the message out to the world that, hey, guess what? I'm a believer. I'm a believer in the hereafter. I'm a believer that good will conquer over evil. I'm a believer that light is stronger than darkness. I'm a believer that Jesus Christ was who Jesus Christ was, and that he died for all of mankind's sins, and that he rose on the third day, and after the 40th day he descended up into heaven, and now he makes intercession prayer for us, for if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father. There's all kinds of ways that people can express that same message out to the world. And some people may get it, some people may not get it pertaining to whatever that you're doing. That's like taking a bumper sticker that says, I'm a believer. Or maybe it's just somebody pointing their finger up towards heaven. Okay? Some people that look at that will be offended, or they will just let it just kind of roll off their tongue like, oh, well, so what? and they won't really have a second thought about it. But then there's other people out there that will look at that and say, wow, they're a believer too. Wow, they're pointing up towards heaven. Wow. And that's what it takes to express ourselves in a positive light. And this individual that you're fixing to put on here pertaining to the actor, he has a broad perspective of things to the degree that please listen to what he has to say. And in doing that, I'm going to end by saying this. My brother, David Jeffrey Jackson, the one that died at the age of 51, he was in fact a fan of YouTube. And I didn't really, I've listened to a lot of the YouTube music, and there was a lot of it that I liked. I really did. I liked it. But until I listened to what they are talking about today, I really didn't get the full contact or the full meaning of the YouTube music industry in that movement until just now.
Actually know that there was this underground local music scene thriving, even under curfew and all the rest of it. What do you think as an artist actually about the power of art in the worst kinds of situations?
Yeah, that to me is the most beautiful part of the movie. It's really about our humanity, and in the darkest times, there's something about expressing ourselves and doing it together. These people were going to these underground music clubs at night to either listen to music or to play music. There's a photograph in the film that we have is one of these punk rock drummers got his hand blown off on the front, and literally there's a picture of him with a drumstick duct taped to where his hand used to be. And it's just music as an act of resistance and defiance, art as an act of defiance. And you can put us in the most horrific circumstances, but you can't take away our celebration of our humanity. And we're willing to die for that.
And we're going to play that clip because it is remarkable to see that level of resistance.
The audience was literally risking their life, running from the different bridges to the theater. Our sound guy died before one of those performances.
One day, my bass player came to me and said, "Oh, our drummer, he lost his hand on the front line. He lost his right hand."
And you can see the same stuff happening in Ukraine right now. There's a thriving underground art community.
Yeah, I think that's built out of necessity. We have to have these things. We have to continue to be human beings and be together and experience the best parts of life together. Or else it's just we're on the road to madness.
Bono is famously political in aid of humanity, essentially. He is a political guy.
I was raised during a time where the citizenry was a lot more engaged. I grew up during the Vietnam War, and that was a very kind of fractious time in America, obviously, and very, deeply felt on all sides. And the country was in quite a bit of turmoil. I don't know if we've been somewhat anesthetized since then. I'm not sure. But I do feel like, certainly a band like U2, they've always been, I remember talking to Edge about the fact that he almost didn't join the band because he wasn't sure if it was enough to do with his life. He wanted his life to have greater meaning in service of others. It would have been enough to have the incredible music, but they've always tried to do more. And I think that just speaks to the kind of people they are.
So you do have a day job. You are a pretty famous and active movie star. Now, apparently you were looking to take some kind of time out to be more with your family. I read that you had told your wife you're going to take a good time out unless Christopher Nolan called you. And then he did. And then comes your role in Oppenheimer.
I was smart enough. I had one little carve out in our deal. This one caveat was, because Chris is pretty mercurial, you never know. But most actors have a sense of his timeline. Every kind of 3 or so years, you may or may not get a call. And so I just left myself that one out because if you get a call from him, you really want to be able to pick it up and go. I think anybody would just do the phone book with Chris Nolan if he called and asked.
My final question is going to start with a clip from a Dunkin' Donut ad.
You need no introduction, my partner.
Sometimes it's really hard to be your friend.
You said you were going to support me.
Okay, Super Bowl fun. There's so many layers there, but your close friendship with Ben Affleck, you work together on films, on so many, other issues, and you remain such good friends. Do you ever fall out?
No. We've been friends, since I don't know. I was 10 and he was 8, so that's 43 years, I guess. No, it's kind of beyond that. There can't really be a breakup, And he called me. I thought the idea was really funny. He's clearly making a bigger fool of himself than anybody in the commercial, so everybody else felt fine about putting the tracksuits on, and we had a lot of fun.
I saw you smiling a lot while you were watching that. Matt Damon, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
And Kiss the Future is out next week, exclusively at AMC theaters across the United States. Coming up after the break, Putin casts his call-up net far and wide.
Januka, a young Nepali mother, is assuming the worst.
The Nepali men fighting for Russia in Ukraine and their families who desperately want them back.
There's so many good people in the world that can express themselves in so many different ways other than going to church on Sunday and giving in the plate going around. There's so many ways that a person can give to God that don't have to go to a priest and do the recitement or do the whatever, that will be to God's glory, not to the Presbyterian Church, not to the Baptist Association, not to the Methodist Association, not to the Southern Baptist Association, not to the Assembly of God Association, not to the First Pentecostal Association, not to the Cumberland Presbyterian Association, but to God Almighty. And I have tried to express this again and again and again here in the Bible Belt area, here in Northwest Tennessee, that I truly believe that so many people, and I'm talking about good people now, that really didn't intend to get in locked with a denomination versus being an instrument for the Almighty towards glorifying God. But there's so many people that has gotten basically landlocked. And you talk about prejudicism. I have never found so much prejudicism here in the Bible Belt area pertaining to people don't want to have nothing to do with you if you're a Baptist and the other one is a Church of Christ, or one's a Catholic and one's a Presbyterian. And it's really got down to the degree here in America that you actually have people that won't have nothing to do with you because they drive a Chevrolet and you drive a Ford. I have never seen so much division of repetitious disaster on levels unimaginable that's not only out there in the streets, but it's actually in our churches. It's actually in the White House pertaining to our politicians. You got people that will purposely not vote right because they know that if they do, it's going to make them look bad according to the party that they belong to. And this was not what our ancestors intended to formulate pertaining to the founders, the framers of our great nation. You got so many politicians in America that say one thing but turn around and do just the very opposite. They're full of hypocrisy. They're hypocrites. And that is one of the things that has caused America to take one step forward and two steps back, I believe, is that people have been blinded ignorantly, some of them intentionally. Some of them won't never come out of the darkness. I mean, you got to admit, whenever Christ said that he come not for those that needeth not a physician, but for those that did. There are certain people in the world that are so blinded, that are so so deceived, that me and you could talk to them until we was literally blue in the face, and they're still not going to be moved. They're still not going to have a change of heart. You're still not going to be able to conform him or her, because they are so impenetrated in how they believe and what they believe, kind of like the people over in the Middle East that believe that you can put on a suicide vest and basically die for a cause, an unworthy cause, in not only bringing death to yourself, but bringing death to others by going into a group of people and pulling a detonator cord, thinking that whenever you do that, you're going to go to heaven, live with Allah, have 99 virgins, and drink all the wine you want. People can be very, very passionate, very, very sincere in their belief, but just because you believe something does not make it right. It does not make it justifiable. This is where Satan has come in and blinded so many different people in so many different areas that I just barely touched the skim of it towards what's going on in the world today, all over the world, all over the planet, towards people that's actually doing things and not realizing what they're doing. I truly believe that that's one of the reasons why that it was so incredibly significant whenever Jesus was hanging on the cross after going through the brutality that he went to. And I still say to this day that mankind did not kill Jesus. Humanity did not kill Jesus per se in the physical form. If anything killed Jesus, it was in the psychological form pertaining to his heart being broken. But it was Jesus that basically, whenever it was time for Jesus to say, okay, let's end this thing, let's turn the lights out, it was Jesus that was in control of that. But whenever he looked up into the heavens, and then he looked back down upon to the group of people hanging on the cross and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. For they know not what they do. I'm going to say it one more time. For they literally know not what they do. That was the primary core of Christ coming into the world towards being a representative for the Father by the Son in teaching us the right way towards having the right frame of mind, the right motive, and the right heart in doing it to God's glory and not doing it to mankind's glory, and for darn sure not doing it for Satan's glory. You have to recognize whenever it talks about the depths of Satan there in the first 4 chapters of Revelations and in the King James Version Bible, whenever it talks about the depths of Satan, I used to look at that myself before I become mature enough to understand those scriptures. But I used to look at that and say, well, that's talking about breaking the commandments of God. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou this, thou that. But since then, God has showed me there was so many different other meaningful meanings in what Christ said, or at that particular time, it was the Holy Spirit that was influencing John the Revelator on the island of Patmos by saying, he or heeth, which means mankind, who have not known the depths of Satan, hold fast till I come. There is so many different areas out there that influences people in a negative way that it ain't even funny. And I ain't talking about thousands. I'm talking about millions of different ways that humanity can be stuck in the depths of Satan, either out of ignorance, laziness, being too money hungry, not having enough love for their fellow man. There's so many different depths of Satan, so many different depths out there that people have deviated into, that it's not even funny. And just like my mother used to always say, whenever we'd hear an outlandish story in the community where I'm here in Northwest Tennessee, where somebody had done something preposterously, incredibly either stupid or evil, either or, I would hear my mother say, well, I never would have thought she would have stooped that low, or I never would have thought that he would have stooped that low. That stooping is a depth that certain people are willing to participate in while others are not. Now, granted, sin is sin. Regardless whether it's a big lie or a little lie, it's still a lie. It's still sin. But whenever you get to talking about the depths of Satan, it's not just surrounding the commandments of God, of the 10 commandments, but it's actually all the above. You know, just like the scripture says, for him that knoweth to do good and not to do it is a sin. Well, how about those that don't know to do good? That's where the instructors, that's where the teachers, that's where people such as myself, in being messengers, are responsible to get the message out there before the people. And what they do with that message is going to be up to them. I'm not responsible or accountable for what they either do or don't do. Neither nor are they responsible or accountable for the things that I do or don't do. The only thing that I can do is stay motivated and stay on the path that I believe that the Heavenly Father has put me on. And right now, it's the path of making all these different videos and putting them out there to the general public. Basically, getting them out in public domain. That way, people has the right to watch, listen, idolize, not idolize, but I guess in a way you are idolizing. You're idolizing the things that I'm teaching about. You're idolizing God. You're idolizing the things of God. You're idolizing the teachings of Christ. You're idolizing the depths of the good depths of Christ pertaining to going up against the resistances of evil. So I guess in a way you are idolizing, but the word that I was actually looking for was itemize. You have a right to itemize the things that I'm saying towards whether or not you agree or disagree, whether or not you like it or you don't like it. That has nothing to do with right and wrong. Right and wrong is based around the core of origin of our compass. We have a northern star to go by that even Obama talked about several different times, that once you lose that northern star, once you lose that compass that tells you whether or not you're going in a northern position, an eastern position, a southern position, or a western position, this is the reason why it was so essential for God to instruct me of a windmill, because if you go back and study windmills that actually began over there where the little Swedens are that have the wooden shoes, I believe. But eventually it come over here to America, and it was expressed not only in the form of art, in what a windmill looked like, but it was expressed towards what the meaning of the windmill actually done, towards pointing in the direction of which way the wind was blowing. In other words, if the wind was coming from the south, blowing to the north, that was the way that the windmill basically turned the opposite core towards, because it was now heading against that wind, which was making its turbines turn. We're supposed to be heading right now in the direction towards conquering and peace upon to the earth. Love, grace, joy, mercy, utopia. Not war, not hardships, not divorces, not illegal immigrants, not fentanyl, not suicides, not gun violence, not 30-something trillion or however much money that we're trillions of dollars in debt towards being chaotic, but we're supposed to all be going in the opposite direction of all that. Was it effective? Obviously not. I preached the message that I preached for 30 plus years, and I still to this day, as far as I know, I still don't have a Joe Osteen congregation following. If I do, I have secret admirers out there that won't voice their opinion because maybe they're scared that if they do, then they're going to be retaliated against the same way that I've been retaliated against. You know, I have neighbors right here within arm's throwing distance of where I live right here. One of them just up the road. he helped me build my lift on my other trailer. That way, all I got to do is hit a button and the lift will either go up or the lift will go down. He actually took time, him and his boys and 2 or 3 other workers that probably worked on that project, give or take, for about 45 minutes to an hour. When it was all said and done with, he didn't ask me for a dime. Not a dime. He said, Juby, I'm your neighbor. I'm supposed to treat you as a neighbor. The only reason why that I've been hesitant about mentioning his name is because I didn't want him to receive the same type of persecution that obviously this neighborhood was in favor towards dismissing into my life. His family that he married to had a junkyard right up here in Sharon, Tennessee. Matter of fact, he had 2 junkyards and still does to this day, Mr. Pitty. And even about within about a first week, 10 days after I got operated on, whenever I built my deck and I built my wheelchair ramp, and then I got a clothesline out here that'll bring my groceries either in or obstacles back out, either or, towards helping me with my disability right now. I didn't put into the equation towards a fat man seat pertaining to either a wheelchair or a walker, in it being heavilier built pertaining to the weight distributions. Let me get my words out there correctly. And usually whenever they do that, the walker is actually bigger or the wheelchair is a little bit bigger. And it may not be but just a fraction of an inch or maybe an inch and a half, but I didn't put it into the equation properly. And because of it, my utility trailer out here was too close to the end post to the degree that I could not get my walker or my wheelchair through there without it being a problem. It was about an inch and a half too narrow. An inch and a half to 2 inches too narrow. And I said something to my neighbor down the road here. He said, no problem. He said, we'll be down there momentarily. And sure enough, they come down there with his son and another helper. They got a chain. They had to jack up the tongue on the trailer because I had it blocked up. They had to dismantle the blocks. They pulled the tongue over from the trailer, give or take about 3 inches. They put the blocks back underneath the back of it, raised the front end of the tongue, put the blocks back underneath the front of it. Voila, there you go. What do I owe you? You don't owe me nothing, Juby. You are my neighbor. Like I said, I've been hesitant about mentioning Mr. Hotto's name because I didn't want persecution to be falling upon that family pertaining to collateral damage in regards towards what that he has sacrificed for his neighbor out here. But now I am going to go ahead and mention his name, and yes, I will go ahead and mention some people over in Kenton that has taken a liking to me for whatever reason. Miss Sherry Collins, and also Miss Rollins over here, Miss Sheila Rollins over here towards Sharon. I've got about 3 or 4 people that has not hesitated for 1 second in being there if I truly need them to call them. And I'm not going to tell you how much that means whenever I get a text from like Miss Shirley last night. I got a text that, hey, Juby, you want some chili? We got some extra chili over here at the house. And I texted her back this morning because I didn't catch it late last night whenever she texted it to me about 8:15. And I texted her back this morning and I said, you know, I'd love to have some chili. I said, I'm planning on getting out today. And if I do, I'll be sure and swing by your house and pick up a bowl. I don't know if anybody in this community knows what that means. But you will be surprised what it means if you're in jail and you even got a comb or a toothbrush. Because I've been thrown off in the facilities before to where I didn't have neither one. And at that point in time, whenever you don't have what you ought to have to survive with, then you either do without or you lower your standards and humble yourself towards asking people, could you please let me borrow your comb so I could at least brush my hair or whatever? And of course, you're not going to ask nobody for their toothbrush because it's not a hygiene thing to be sharing with. I don't even know that I would be willing to share my toothbrush, even with the person that I was married to at the time. Even though you kiss and even though you do other things towards swapping DNA, something about a toothbrush is so personal. I wouldn't even begin to imagine somebody asking me for my toothbrush and borrowing it, or vice versa towards me having to ask somebody else for their toothbrush. But there could actually come a time to where I actually had to do that. And if I did, then so be it. I would ask. But hopefully things won't get so bad in my particular life that I have to do that. Like I said, there's so many different ways that you can promote light versus darkness. There's so many different ways that you can share the unity of humanity in a positive way versus a negative way. There's so many different ways, and those ways have been basically trampled upon to the degree. That's the reason why I use the terminology sometimes that America has been hijacked. And it literally has. It has been hijacked since the late 80s, whenever the White House up there decided to go in one direction versus the other direction, especially in the church communities, the so-called church communities not willing to support the windmill ministries. And since then, there has been so many mistakes made by our United States government, it ain't even funny. And I'm not just talking about my life. I'm talking about everybody's life in some of the things that they have done that should not have been brought upon to the will of the people. You know why? Because we were supposed to be on top of our game, and we were supposed to be in control of these politicians that we put in power, and we were supposed to hold their feet to the fire, that if they promised us that they was going to do this, this, and this, that we made sure that they done that, and that. But that's where America has failed, and that's where other people in other continents, in other governments have failed, is because they have been too lax in the people that we have put in power that was supposed to be there to protect us, and come to find out, instead of them protecting us, they was only in there of their own interest, of their own personal interest.
Machine. The United States says North Korea and Iran are sending Moscow missiles, drones, and ammunition. But lesser known are the people they recruit from poor nations to fight on the front lines. For instance, in Nepal, where young men are lured with the promise of significant cash. But as Matthew Chance found out in this special report from Kathmandu, desperate families are left clueless and penniless when their men don't come home.
It should be a world apart from the battlefields of Ukraine. But this Himalayan state has become an unlikely casualty of Russia's brutal rule. Nepalis like Ramchandra, who escaped the Russian army with his life and prayed for his comrades still fighting on the front lines. He took a bullet and shrapnel in Ukraine, he told me, and saw many Nepalis killed. Some complained they were sent forward while Russian troops held back, he tells me. But the main problem was the language barrier. Sometimes you couldn't even understand where you're supposed to be going, he says, which way to point your gun.
Chaos. Confusion.
But that chaos hasn't stopped Nepalis signing up. Many posting upbeat videos on social media of their military training in Russia, where they're meant to be prepared for the hardships of the Ukraine war. In reality, several former Nepali recruits tell CNN they were sent into battle after barely 2 weeks to fight for the Kremlin, armed with a rifle and a contract for a few $1,000s a month, a fortune in Nepal, where unemployment is high. Well, the vast majority of Nepalis fighting for Russia in Ukraine are doing it for the money, and they come from these down-at-hill, impoverished areas across the country. We've actually come to one of them now on the outskirts of Kathmandu to meet a woman who in the past few days has learned that her husband has been killed fighting in that distant war. Hello. Hi, namaste. Namaste. He was with a unit of Nepalis battling Ukrainians, she tells me, when he was gunned down. It was my husband's friend, his Nepali commander in Ukraine, who called me in the middle of the night and told me he'd been killed, she tells me, still shocked at the news.
You know, as I'm sitting here listening to this and watching this for the first time, my mind reflects back upon to the Afghanistan women and children that was let down by their own adults, by their own leaders, by their own men, that America thought that we had conformed that group of people to the degree that they would actually be willing to fight the Taliban even to the point of death. I just hope that people over in Afghanistan, especially the women and children, will have an opportunity of watching this and understanding that there comes a time that your livelihood, your pride, your humanity means more than surrendering to the enemy. And I'm really glad that things is turning out the way that they are, not because they are, but in people showing their sense of not being frightened or fearful of evil, even at the expense of sacrificing the ultimate sacrifice for, because this is what they believe in. Once more, the people that are being conformed over in Russia because of a few dollars, a few senseless dollars, obviously they're just as blind as the government officials are over in Russia that's willing to go over there and fight for them to begin with. So now, looking at it from that perspective, those same people that's doing that for the Russian government have become part of the problem versus the solution to it. Once more, you can be sincere. You can be very passionate about your sincerity, but just because you're sincere does not mean that you're right. Because you can be sincerely wrong. You can be sincerely wrong. And for people to want to join up or sell arms, sell bullets, sell rockets, sell whatever, all in the name of the good old American, or all in the name of profiteering off of currency, one day those same people that are doing this, they're going to be held just as responsible. They're going to be held on the same accountability as the people that are actually committing the acts. This is the reason why over in America, it is essential that if we see somebody breaking the law, or if we see especially children that are in violation of either being damaged, hurt, or abused, we're supposed to report that. You know why we're supposed to report that? It's not so much based around the Good Samaritan laws out of the Bible, which that's one reason why we're supposed to report that. But another reason why that we're supposed to report that is because if we don't report that, then we become an accessory to the crime. So if my brother, David Jeffrey Jackson, that was living at the time, whenever we made a telephone call to Nashville to the Child Abuse Center, and then they steered us in calling up the local Child Abuse Center here in Dresden, Tennessee, and then to think, after my brother died, then I get falsely accused by the very state that promoted those laws, that if you see a child in trouble or being abused or violated in some way or another, you're supposed to contact the Child Abuse Center And to think that now they're throwing a charge in my life towards stalking, even though the people live right across the road from me, and even though the people has 3 children. And to think to this day, I still haven't got some sort of a formal apology from the officials in the state of Tennessee pertaining to what went on out here, in the degree that it basically drove me off the edge to the degree that I wanted to basically end my life. While I was in jail, knowing that I was being taken advantage of, not only by the crooks, not only by the dope addicts, not only by the evil demonic people out here, but I'm being taken advantage of by the very people that's supposed to be protecting me and supposed to be preventing from me going through these things that now they themselves are a part of. Rather than them rewarding me, in which we didn't make the telephone calls pertaining to the welfare of the children because we was looking for some sort of pat on the back. And we really didn't do it because we was afraid that we would wind up going to jail towards being accessory to the crime. We'd done it because it was the right thing to do. Just like the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan wasn't pressured in the Bible, according to the Bible, of doing what he'd done, pertaining to finding the individual that had just recently been robbed, and he was at the point of death, towards taking the man, putting him on his horse and taking him down to the inn, and then telling the teller that if I owe you any more money, whenever I come back this way, just let me know, and I'll be sure and pay for the expenses of whatever it has costed you to help this individual out. That Good Samaritan that done that in the Bible, he wasn't pressured. He wasn't blackmailed. He wasn't under any type of pressure other than the pressure of his own personal consciousness of knowing that this is the proper right thing to do. That was the primary purpose for David and I making a telephone call to the Child Abuse Center, even though we knew that it was taboo, because we was raised up being abused. And to think that the elderly people around here was still living under the same ideology that, oh, it's taboo. You cannot interfere with another man or another woman's life out here. You're not supposed to interfere with the way that they raise their children. Even though we knew it was taboo, we still done it anyway. We made those telephone calls. We was concerned about those children. And to think that Dresden, Tennessee was going to try to pull the wool over the rest of the community, the 32,000 people in this community, in this county, of trying to promote that, hey, Dennis Jackson is a stalker, because we know that he's a repeat offender, because up the road a little bit in the state of Kentucky, even though it was Kentucky that broke their own laws by putting it on a federal level of making 2 non-threatening telephone calls, even though I had not violated any order from any judge. Now they drive across state lines, go all the way to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and pick me up and drag me back to Trigg County in front of Judge Woodall. And now they crawfished, instead of it being a federal crime, in which I should have rightfully either went in front of a federal judge in Paducah, Kentucky, or I should have went to a federal judge in Dover, Tennessee. Because the Dover federal authorities control the Tennessee side, and the Paducah federal authorities control the Kentucky side. But what did they do? What did Kentucky do? They backed it off, turned it into a regular state charge, basically a county charge, and now I'm fighting the judge in Trigg County because Gary Hawkins and Lisa Hawkins lives in Trigg County, in which I had no idea up until that time of where they lived. And to be quite honest with you, I could have cared less of where they lived. I could have cared less where Gary Hawkins or Lisa Hawkins lived whenever I was dealing with the LBL, Land Between the Lakes government federal entity pertaining to a federal park up here in Western Kentucky. I could have cared less where they lived. And to be quite honest with you, I still could care less where they live. You know, the detective skills that I have, I'm not going to lie to you. It has crossed my mind towards me disguising myself, maybe putting on a wig, maybe putting on a beard, maybe looking like a 100-year-old man walking around with a cane, and basically going up into that region and start hanging around restaurants, hanging around this place, hanging around that place, and figuring out where their patterns was, and actually going in there and spying on them. Going in there and spying on them, because I've picked up the Facebook occasionally from time to time. I look up various people that I consider my enemies, and I figure out where they live and what they're doing. I know for a fact that Gary Hawkins is involved with the church up there. He's involved with the school up there, which is all good. But I'm smart enough to know this, that if I was to go up there, even if it was just solely out of curiosity, innocent curiosity, that because of that in which what has already occurred, all that would be doing would be enhancing or supporting their ideology up there that they was trying to promote towards me being a stalker to begin with. So I keep my ass down here in Tennessee, and I don't go up there and doing stupid stuff like that. Because at that point in time, I would be asking for trouble. Whenever I made the 2 telephone calls within a few minutes after my probation had ended, there was never any discussion, and I got courts to prove it. There was never any discussion about multiple telephone calls pertaining to those people being harassed. The only thing that was presented to me by my public offender that was assigned to me by the name of Wildesworth out of Louisville, Kentucky, is that, Dennis, you made a statement that you was going to go to war with a darkly complected individual, Arabic descent, and you believed that this individual was Satan in the flesh that you had already met, and you had already put out on recording form in LBL on a federal park that you wanted to destroy or kill this individual. Because of that, that's considered premeditation. And because of that, you are in violation. And because of that, this is the reason why that you was arrested. There was never any discussion either before, during, or after those charges was presented, and I went ahead and agreed with the courts towards going to MCC in downtown Chicago and being studied by Dr. Dana. And when it was all said and done with, I got a clean bill of health. Matter of fact, I scored an A+ in originality, cooperation, IQ, taking the examinations, doing all the above. Got an A+. And then 2 years later, I get attacked by the same group of people in the same organization pertaining to land between the lakes, a federal park that's on one side of one state and on another side of another state, and to think that after they arrested me that they was going to downsize that charge because of their benefit, because they lived in that county and they had control of that judge. And now here I am defenseless because I can't hire a $12,000, $14,000, $15,000 Johnny Cochran, in which I went to Clarksville, Tennessee, and talked to several different attorneys. I got to meet the mayor in Clarksville. I talked to some attorneys that had multiple license to be able to practice law either in the state of Tennessee or Kentucky. And every one of them that I talked to, hey, you're looking at $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 right off the bat just for filing fees for us to represent you. And that ain't what the final cost is going to be whenever it's all said and done with, Mr. Jackson. Well, guess what? I didn't have that kind of money. I did have at the time had that kind of money, but I wasn't going to throw it away over bogus ass charges that was coming from the same group of people that was trying to destroy my life. Not only did they try to destroy my life then, but they tried to destroy my life before that, 2 years before that, in taking me or causing me to have to go to Chicago and downtown Chicago in MCC and basically stolen about 6 months of my life out then, in addition to what they done prior to that in the year 2007, toward trying to make me out to be a homegrown terrorist, even though it was me that was trying to warn the people up in that area about major electrical disturbances to come. And still to this day, I still haven't heard nothing from the state of Kentucky. I still haven't heard nothing from the state of Tennessee. I still haven't heard nothing from the state of either Texas or Oklahoma regarding my investigations of what went on and how it went on. Speaks volumes about the people that engineered this type of, I'm going to call it a lynching. And even though they didn't come right out and assassinate me or poison me to the degree like they did the leader over in Russia that was an activist for humanitarian rights, they was still trying to lynch me, because I promise you, if I would have given in on any form or fashion towards saying, oh yeah, I had intentions of wanting to create electrical disturbances. I was gonna manufacture some sort of a homemade bomb, and I was gonna try to blow up the dam. Do you realize that I would be looking at 20 to life in prison? And even if they put you in a kooky house, even if they put you in somebody that was basically considered a lunatic, you're still going to be under the treatment of doctors and judges that basically, if you're not crazy whenever you do go in going through a treatment center like this, you will be by the time you go out. You'll basically be slobbering all over your shoes and bumping into the walls, not knowing what day it is, what time it is, who the president is, or any of the above. I've seen it. I've experienced it by looking at it over people just as little as taking a rock and throwing it through a post office, a federal building, knowing that if they didn't do that, they was going to freeze to death. But because the federal government seen those people as being a nuisance, they basically destroyed those people by using them as a guinea pig, giving them this amount of medication and seeing if it made their hair fall out, or giving them this amount of medication and seeing if it made them swell up like a frog. And that's exactly what they done in Trigg County, Kentucky, pertaining to Judge Woodall. That was all a stem off from what the original lynchmans was trying to do to me up in land between the lakes up in Kentucky. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll continue to keep saying it. These people that engage in those type of affairs, because I don't have the money to shell out to go before a court again and to have this all re-examined. The only truth and the only fairness pertaining to justice that I can stand on is that one day in the great white throne judgment, all the people that has circulated their lives around mine, beginning in Kenton, Tennessee in 1983, will stand on a platform of being accused, and I will be the accuser. During which time, there will be some very serious questions asked, and during which time, I pray that Mr. Gary Hawkins, his wife Lisa Hawkins, and Dwayne Camry, that used to work for the Land Between the Lakes National Park Institution, badge number 1414, I pray to God that these people, as well as the people that was working below Dwayne Camry at the time for the Forestry Division over there, I pray to God that these people will have a reasonable answer to these questions, because if they do not, you can go to church all you want, you can plead insanity. You can work with the school system all you want, but I guarantee you, because these attendance has not been dealt with properly, this could very well cost these individuals their very soul in being thrown into a devil's hell. The Bible says to forgive your brother not 7 times, but 70 times 7. But this is the part that humanity don't get, okay? Our court system demands, and which rightfully so, that if you made a mistake, you have to pay restitution to the courts. Rightfully so. But on the other hand, if they have done something stupid, if they have done something intentionally towards either being delinquent, dereliction of duty, or they was actually involved in it directly towards trying to destroy that individual's life, they actually think that if you don't have the Johnny Cochran money to pay out to hire you an attorney and get all this stuff brought before the courts again, that they got away with doing what they done scot-free. Beginning with the mayor in Kenton, Tennessee, Damian Cross, in 1983. These same people will be asked some very serious questions. And I'm just afraid for their own souls, for their own benefits, that if they do not have reasonable answers, whenever God the Father asks these people these questions, it could very well cost them their very soul. What does the Bible say about your soul? The Bible says that what has it gained a person if they gain the whole world in recognition or in money or in whatever other areas? If they gain the whole world but lose their soul, what have they gained? I don't wish for nobody to lose their soul. I don't care if it's the deepest, darkest, cruelest, meanest person that I've come across that's tried to destroy my life. I still do not pray for that person's soul to go to hell. I pray that God would deliver that person, and I pray for forgiveness because of that person. Now, just because I love their soul doesn't mean that I have to love what that they have done to me. That's the reason why this is my testimony. This is the reason why I promote my message as I'm getting messages from the TV about certain things. I add to it as an instructor or a teacher, that hopefully somebody out there will pay attention to some of the things that I'm talking about, especially people that I've had interchangements with, regardless whether it be in Tennessee, Kentucky, Oklahoma, or even Texas, pertaining to the ATF, of the way that they basically entrapped them poor people over Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas.
There's been no notification from the Russians, she adds. Nothing. It's a growing frustration with Russia's treatment of Nepalis as cannon fodder in the Ukraine war, shared with these protesters near the Russian embassy in Kathmandu.
Hello, sir. Hi.
And the Nepali foreign minister, who told me he's pressed Moscow to curb recruitment, to no avail.
They have told me that they will sort it out, the concern of Nepal.
So they've told you they will sort it out?
Yeah.
But they haven't done anything yet?
Yet they didn't have, we don't have any information of doing anything.
There's not much information either on how many Nepalis are even fighting for Russia. About 200 according to Nepali officials. But multiple sources, including campaigners, lawmakers and returning fighters, tell CNN as many as 15,000 Nepalis could be fighting in Ukraine.
Well, we've asked the Russians how many Nepalis they've recruited and how many have been killed, what the Kremlin calls its special military operation. So far, there's been no response, but there are concerns here in Nepal. The casualty figures may be high. CNN has learned that hundreds of Nepalis who joined the Russian military are out of contact, and it's uncertain if they're dead or alive.
Januka, a young Nepali mother, is assuming the worst. Her husband hasn't called for more than 2 months now. The children ask me when their dad is coming home, she sobs. Even if he doesn't love us anymore, we just want to see his face. But another Nepali recruit to Russia's war may never be seen again. Matthew Chance, CNN, Kathmandu, in Nepal.
The unintended consequences there. Coming up, Hollywood legend Jodie Foster unites with boxing superstar Kaylee Reese for the latest season of the thrilling mystery series True Detective. Working with you was like training with Mike Tyson.
Oh, without the biting.
She just let go your ear.
Yeah. No, she didn't bite any ears off.
I like that show. I've been watching a little bit of it after being up in Alaska, working up there. And she's done a remarkable good job in her acting. And
You need my help.
The stars joined me here in London ahead of the show's grand...
doing what she does as far as dealing with various circumstances in that area, which there's probably no doubt a lot of that stuff that is promoted on that TV series show in Alaska, they probably have to deal with on certain levels similar to the very thing that they promote on the show. You never would have thought that, but whenever you're in an area that stays frozen basically year round, or supposed to, until the weather started acting the way that it has towards thermal frost melt. But there's probably so many other different frozen scenarios that people never have truly even thought about. You know, that's kind of like whenever the ground's froze and you can't get out and dig holes for the dead, what do you do with them? Store them in a storage area until it does warm up enough that you can get out there with a backhoe and dig holes for the dead. There's so many other areas, things that they had to deal with up there in Alaska that we don't even think about people down here having to deal with. But on the other hand, there's other people that have to deal with things such as Phoenix, Arizona, or Florida. Whenever it gets so daggum hot, that it cause your windshield to blow out of your car if you don't roll your windows down a little bit. Or a battery to fry. Of course, your battery can fry just as quickly in the cold as it does in the hot.
The show's grand finale, which is this Sunday. Jodie Foster, Kelly Reese, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What attracted you about True Detective in this particular series?
Lisa Lopez, the director, just did such a magnificent job writing all the episodes and creating this world with the two True Detectives that are female now. We remember season 1 and Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, that there's something really extraordinary about the anthology of being able to say we're gonna do something completely different.
So since Jodie brought up season 1, was it the female-led character of this one that attracted you to it? And it's your first major on-screen, right?
Yes, it's my first major on-screen. It's only my third acting job as well.
You are part Cape Verdean, part Native American. Was that also an attractive, calling point for you?
Absolutely, because the representation or lack thereof that we have as Indigenous people is just, it's getting a lot better, and we're just in such a great time. So when it was presented to me, this character, Navarro, was Inupiaq and Dominican. She was part of two different worlds, part of the community that she was going to be policing. It was something that was so familiar to me because it's kind of that balance that you have to have. You don't feel enough for either, so it just attracted me to this very layered character.
Jodie Foster, Kelly was a boxing champ.
Yes.
And she said, though, that
is.
And will maybe go back to boxing?
I'm not retired yet.
Okay. And said that working with you was like training with Mike Tyson.
Oh, without the biting.
She just let go your ear.
Yeah. No, she didn't bite any ears off. No, it was like training with Mike Tyson in like '86 in his prime.
And Jodie, you are obviously a mentor of sorts, I guess, for all the newcomers and younger actresses. You decided that you wanted your character, Liz Danvers, to be aged up.
Well, my age, yes.
Your age.
Yes.
But putting Navarro's story as the center.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I think Issa probably wanted that too, but it was something that I really wanted to remind us that we were doing something that really isn't done very much. Just to have the central voice of the film be an Indigenous voice, to look through those eyes in a way, not just because we're doing representation, but because we really want to
be in that body and really understand it from that perspective. And so to do that, I'm just here to support. So I kind of reverse engineered my character of Liz Danvers to support Kaylee's character's journey.
That doesn't happen often.
Well, you know, there's a funny thing that happens when you turn 60, I think, is, at least for me, I feel like there's like some weird chemical that starts going off in your body, and you just don't care. And part of that not caring is that you suddenly realize that it's so much more fun and more satisfying to recognize that it's not your time, it's someone else's time.
So the last major thriller detective that you played got an Oscar, Clarice, etc. Congratulations, because you're nominated again.
Yes.
In this case, Best Supporting Actress,
Yes.
right, for Naiad.
Yes.
Tell me the story. Everybody should know it.
Well, it's the story of Diana Naiad, who is a swimmer, had been a marathon swimmer for all her whole life, and then came back at the age of 60, finally accomplishing her mission at 64, to swim from Cuba to Florida.
Annette Bening and yourself, again, kind of aged up. I mean, you were not shy about the sun damage and the mask damage that she had. You know, the
poor
lips.
Annette.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that takes some courage, also. To
As I say, I was best supporting abs because I never had to get in the water. I basically just stood on the boat and sucked in my stomach and my jogger bra, and that was pretty much all I had to do.
There's the whole taxi driver kind of cast group that's all meeting at the Oscars, right? By the time you did that film, I think you
I was 12 years old.
You were 12, and you had more experience in film than either Martin Scorsese or Robert De Niro.
Yes, I had made more movies than either one of them at that point. But it is funny to see. I mean, of course, I have so much respect for Scorsese and De Niro and all of the movies that they've made. But yeah, my reference for them is very different. You know, Martin Scorsese had a little funny mustache, and he was really young, and his mother was on set the whole time, and she was always
On
like
Taxi Driver.
Yes, and she was tucking in his shirt all the time, and she was like patting his butt.
And not making sure you were okay.
So I do have a different memory of that.
Patting his butt, that's really good. And just because Killers of the Flower Moon is another amazingly timely film in terms of diversity and representation of indigenous people. Did you like the film?
You know, there's mixed feelings about the film. They're not anything negative. I am so proud of Lily Gladstone and the entire Indigenous cast and the entire Osage Nation. She did a wonderful job. So did the whole cast. So I think having an ally like Martin Scorsese, who took his platform and told this story and worked with them, it's an amazing opportunity just to continue to go forward.
Jodie Foster, Kaylee Reese, thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up from my archive, the hidden weapons of war haunting civilians long after the fighting stops. We go back to Afghanistan, 1996. 17 years of war, first against the Soviets and now against each other, have turned his country into one of the world's biggest minefields.
I like Jodie. I've kept up with her throughout my life. Me and her basically the same age. And she was given a raw hand back during Ronald Reagan's administration of a crazy person that basically really did stalk her and was targeting her in a very, very evil, demonic way. And I'm glad that her career has sailed off in the direction that it has, to the degree that she's become a very, very successful, meaningful actor. I really like that about her. I really do. We're gonna go ahead and kick this up here. We're gonna avoid this war stuff here, which basically it's gonna be about. Looks like we got ball games, soccer, basketball, golf, PGA, weather, golf, exercise, Trump, golf, cellular phones, more golf, eating, more golf, a lot of golf. Time of the year for the golf, right? Ho, 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 let's back up.
Sending him up.
Let's back up. Let's hear what the Vice President's got to say here. This will be kind of interesting, and then this will be the last of the video, the last of the recording here. Stop it there.
Kamala
Harris met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. U.S. aid for Ukraine is on hold as House lawmakers go on a 2-week recess without taking action on a supplemental security package. Today, the vice president said it's time to stop the political games in Washington.
We must be unwavering, and we cannot play political games. Political gamesmanship has no role to play in what is fundamentally about the significance of standing with an ally as it endures an unprovoked aggression. There's only plan A, which is to ensure that Ukraine receives what it needs. I will emphasize that an indication of where we can and frankly must be is that there is bipartisan support in both of our houses of Congress, on the Senate side and the House of Representatives. And it is my full belief that were the supplemental package, the security package, to make it to the floor of the House of Representatives, that it would actually pass.
CNN's Christian Amanpour, who was at the conference, spoke with Zelensky about the death of Alexei Navalny. He said this is just another example of why the world needs to stand up to Vladimir Putin.
We have to work in one joint team. That is the answer. If Ukraine will be alone, you have to understand what will be. Russia will destroy us, destroy Baltic, destroy Poland, and they can do it.
CNN Chief International Security Correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh is also in Munich. Nick, what else are we hearing from world leaders?
Yeah, look, I think as in yesterday, today, still great focus, great sadness over the death of Alexei Navalny as we hear more details about his team's bid to essentially confirm that death and retrieve the body. His mother went to the prison colony this morning, we are told, up in the Arctic Circle, known as Polar Wolf, was told there that his body had been taken to a nearby administrative centre town called Salahard. She went to the morgue there, was told the body wasn't in the morgue, and his team are being told by the Russian investigators that they've looked into this initially and found, quote, nothing criminal about it. The mother has now officially been informed of the death by a telegram. So a feeling, I think, there by Navalny supporters that the circumstances of his death are essentially being covered up and they may never get to the bottom of it despite their desperate efforts. And that perhaps reflected, I think, in the reaction we're seeing here internationally. I should point out at this stage that we don't have concrete proof that Navalny was murdered by the Putin government, although they certainly didn't look after a man of frail health by sending him up to an Arctic Circle jail. Yet still, Antony Blinken, US Secretary of State, saying very clear this is another sign of extraordinary brutality of the Putin administration. In fact, we had European officials yesterday directly using the word murder when they referred to the death of Navalny. But his passing, his unexpected death has galvanized, I think, opinions here that could easily have been slightly more focused or troubled by former President Donald Trump's assertion that NATO's integrity might lapse and he might even goad Russia to invade people who didn't pay towards their defence enough. Instead, very clear statements and vision now about the threat that Russia poses. And that's also, I think, assisted the message of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who today took the stage, gave a very impassioned speech, essentially telling European leaders that his struggle could soon be their struggle, that Russia may not stop with Ukraine. And to having to deal with the complex news, not only of the death of Navalny and the reminder of how brutal Putin can be on distance and to the outside world, but the loss of a key town by Ukraine, Avdiivka in the east, the subject of fierce fighting for months, for weeks, frankly, and finally this morning, Ukraine saying that they are withdrawing from it. A sign that that lack of $60 billion from the US is taking a bitter toll on the front line here. There are multiple areas we're hearing of Russian advances about at this stage, or potential advances, and so a real-life consequence of that Republican dysfunctionality in Congress. Zelensky saying, for every one Ukrainian soldier that died, 7 Russians died. That may sound like a benefit to Ukraine, but it shows how many lives Russia is willing, in Ukraine's view, to squander here to take a small town, and a sign of the enormous challenge ahead for Ukraine, even if it does get all that Western aid. Frederica?
And the bottom line is this. It speaks volumes about what type of leader that would be willing to force that type of burden upon to his own people And if the truth be known, he's probably either putting some of the most less experience on the front line, or he's putting those that they didn't care about to begin with on the front line, hoping of what the end results would be. I think, if I'm not mistaken, David done the same thing in the Bible, because he had a fancy for some particular woman in the Bible, and because of it, he sent the woman's husband out on the front lines, hoping that he would get killed, and that's exactly what happened. The husband to the woman got killed. You know, you got evil people that has evil motives, that does things in people's lives that thinks that they're not going to be held accountable for these things. And I got news for them. They are. Regardless whether it's things that happened in the Bible 4,000 years ago, or the things that's happening over in Russia, or the things that's happening in my life, or the things that's happening in millions of other people's lives all over the planet. These people that are committing these type of atrocities, these types of travesties upon these people, they will be held accountable. Now, they may look at this as it being a game. And, you know, going back to the reflection point of whenever Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, in which I'm fixing to end this video here, Jesus was not talking about all the people in that group of people that took a part in all that. I promise you, he was not talking about all the people. Now, by and large, metaphorically speaking, yes, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. As a whole, yes, that is correct. But let's say out of the 1,000 people, there was a third of them that was completely blinded in what was going on, to the degree that they knowed what was happening, or believed to know what was going on, was totally wrong. But yet, no, they still didn't speak out against it. There was another third that actually thought that this man actually could have deserved this, but they was hesitant about not looking at the brighter side of his innocence. And then there was another side, another third, that know damn good and well what they was doing to this man was wrong, but they went ahead and done it anyway. Now, do you really think that the Lord hanging on the cross intended for that third that know that what they was doing was cruelly wrong, but they still done it anyway? Do you really think that Jesus was praying to his Father, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do? You know why he wasn't talking to that third? Is because they knowed what they was doing was wrong. They knowed what they was doing was wrong, and they still pursued it anyway. The other 2/3, that's the 2/3 that God was talking about. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They was either not doing what they should have done out of lack of courage, or they was debating the fact of whether or not the man was guilty of the charges that they was accusing him of to begin with. Towards being blinded by the devil. Satan blinded those people, and there really wasn't but one of them that had any type of real remorse towards basically committing suicide, taking his own life, because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to live with himself, and that was Judas. Out of the 1,000 people that was engaged, I'm just using that for a metaphor, out of the 1,000 people that was engaged in that activity that day, there was not but one recorded that actually took his own life. Now, there was other ones that was recorded that debated whether or not this was the Lord, and one of those was, in fact, one of the centurion soldiers that actually crucified Jesus, that whenever Jesus took his last breath, they claimed that the ground shaked as a great earthquake, and the sun become dark as sackcloth momentarily, and during that time, it brought fear into everybody's life, and one of the soldiers that helped to destroy Jesus' body at the time, knelt down at the cross and said, surely this was the Son of God. surely this was the Son of God. We want to thank you for listening to this program today, coming out of NBC World News. We want to pray for each and every person all over the planet that are going through such turmoil, being abused, being used, being taken advantage of, being bullied, being treated unfairly. We want to pray for the elderly, the young. We want to pray for those that really and truly are ignorant of the fact of selling a demonic figure such as Russia bombs, or participating in their activities towards going and joining up with that brigade. We want to pray that God will open their eyes and deliver them from the ignorances that they're under, towards understanding that what President Putin is doing is evil. Is totally evil. Not only to the Ukrainians, but to his own people. We want to pray for our leadership here in America pertaining to our politicians. We want to pray that God's mighty will be done all over the planet. We want to pray for those who have recently went through what they've went through pertaining to the gun violence in regards towards the Kansas City Super Bowl parade and the victims that got wounded, not only in that particular incident, but all the other incidences that's happened here in America. We just want to pray that our Father which art in heaven will not lead us into temptation, but that he will deliver us from this evil that obviously we are all under right now. We want to pray for a revival, pray for peace, pray for love, pray for mercy, pray for forgiveness, all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening. Good luck to all of us. May God bless America, God bless our troops, and may God bless our endeavors towards where we go from here. Thank you, and shalom.